Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Madison Realty Capital, New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, AmTrust Title, Customers Bank, Ariel Property Advisors, Capital One Bank, Sterling National Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Meridian Capital Group. Additional funding has been provided by grants from Amarant Bank, AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, B6 Real Estate Advisors, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, Collins Building Services, CPEX Real Estate Services, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Catsimatidis Red Apple Group, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Matone Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Group, RPW Group, SJP Properties, Stonehenge NYC, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Merringore Family Foundation, and these friends. Oh, Crystal Apple, what's going to happen to retail in 2019? Are you going to be shiny? Is it going to be dull? I think after the conversation is completed, it's going to be shiny. And my three guests today are going to tell me why the retail environment looks good for 2019. My guests today include Tim King, who's the founder and the managing partner at CPEX Real Estate Services, Chase Wells, who is a principal partner at SEG Retail, and last but not least, Joe Farkas, who is the founder and CEO of Metropolitan Realty Associates. So you're the agent, the exclusive agent for a lot of these well-known names, Sweetgreens, Starbucks, others. How do you see the market? How do your clients see the market today?
There's a lot of opportunity in the market right now. We're negotiating on deals in a lot of different geographies, not being shy about asking for what we want and having people respond to offers that might have been discarded.
So as somebody would say, you're representing the tenant.
Right, that's my tenant rep side.
You're a tenant rep side. You're the owner side, definitely.
There's an owner.
No question.
There's an owner.
And I'm always an owner's rep.
You're an owner's rep. So as an owner, I mean, you just recently took this situation with Macy's and Nanuet, correct?
Sure, yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Sure, very interesting deal. We capitalized on a department store that was downsizing, looking to spin off some of their lower performing stores. And we were able to, at a very attractive basis, buy a large retail asset adjacent to an unbelievable Simon property mall called Shops at Nanuet. And we saw the opportunity to rent space at a very below market rent versus the competition and take advantage of a retail market in Nanuet that is very active, very desirable for retailers on a national level, guys trying to get into the Rockland County market. And we just had a tremendous show at ICSC.
The tenant, what do they do?
We signed a 100,000 plus square foot lease with At Home. They're a publicly traded company out of Plano, Texas. They are...
Don't hold it against, that's where JCPenney is also.
Okay,
But
that
Joe,
I didn't know.
I would say it's, you say you're renting it at, this opportunity is at below market rents.
Yeah.
I think this just might be the new market.
I think we're creating the market.
Right.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. And they recognized that. They had been trying to get into the market for quite some time, and when the situation was made available to them, they jumped. They were ready to go. They wanted to get into the market, and there's no shortage of those people. I was starting to say that at the recent ICSC conference in Manhattan, we experienced a tremendous amount of retailers, very name brand retailers, who were very excited about opening new stores, but more focused on rent and the bottom line than whether the retail market was being combated by e-commerce or not. They want bricks and mortar. That has not gone out of fashion, and we think that we're going to be able to capitalize
You know,
on that.
a couple of years ago, Tim was instrumental in bringing Bed Bath & Beyond and the other sister companies,
And three of Bed Bath's sister companies.
to Brooklyn. Let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about what's happening in Industry City.
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities between the two, in the sense that they're both monstrous manufacturing facilities that date back 100 years and are being repurposed to modern-day commerce.
But at least the city had the insight of saying there was a need, because Brooklyn was growing, that they should approve the rezoning to allow that.
And I would hope that they continue to do that, because, you know, on the one hand, you have a lot of folks who cry about the loss of manufacturing jobs, and the reality is that the manufacturing base in New York City has been dwindling since World War II, and I don't think it's coming back anytime soon. And, you know, a real estate appraiser often uses the expression highest and best use. And those 100-year-old buildings were never, ever going to be filled with the sound of hammers and rivets. But today, it's being filled with the sound of strollers and shopping carts. And it's productive for the city, it's productive for the neighborhood.
Now, is there any additional space vacant over there?
So in that particular building, if you remember, Michael, the owners, Salmar Properties, in order to be able to put retail into that manufacturing facility, the transaction that they made with the city and the state was that only 15% of the 1,200,000 square feet that they had could be used for retail. If that was lifted, we could fill the rest of the building with retail. But that was, again, kind of interesting in terms of the repurposing, where the bulk of the space is on a second floor. And they designed an incredibly attractive lobby and escalators and elevators and stairs, taking people from a kind of a grand atrium up to a second floor. And again, a 100-year-old building that I believe they lovingly restored. I mean, every single detail of the exterior and interior, it's one of the most modern buildings in terms of infrastructure on the interior. And the exterior looks exactly as it was built 100 years ago. And that's going to be a trend I don't think that's going to change. And even in Manhattan, you may think that there's a retail imbalance, but again, in too many cases, retail's concentrated in certain areas and people are concentrated in different areas. So the ability to adaptively reuse now obsolete buildings and create maybe perhaps smaller retail floor plates or footprints, I think would be beneficial to every community.
Let's talk about Industry City, which is another great story.
So it's the largest adaptive reuse in the country, perhaps the world. As Tim said, now these projects are filled with the sounds of strollers and other weekend activities, but during the day they're also filled with the sounds of people clicking away on keyboards. And there are a lot of people with a lot of innovative new companies who've moved into these excellent spaces. I mean, really nice space and a little more room to spread out.
It's not your father's office,
No, it's not,
but it's today's office space.
It is, and it's accessible to where these people live, which are other parts of Brooklyn. So at Industry City, you were asking me what's been going on lately. We have 50,000-foot museum team lab from Japan. It's a joint venture with the Pace Gallery, moving into the north end of the project. We have in the center of the project, one building is going to be completely dedicated to spirits and breweries. That'll be a great destination for people and should actually generate the rents too. Japan Village opened a few weeks ago, sold out of food his first weekend. It's been incredibly popular and he's only half open. He's going to get the other half open. I think it's a total of about 18,000 square feet he's got on the grade level, and the restaurant and liquor store are going to open in the next week or so, and then he's going to begin construction on the adjacent 20,000 square foot space he's leased to be a showcase for Japanese dry products, the ceramics and cloths and other similar paper goods.
And then we also have potentially Marshalls, you said?
It's TJ Maxx. Going across from Costco. We have ABC Carpet and Home open in 80,000 square feet on the other side of Costco, on the south side of Costco, and a few substantial lease negotiations going on that side of the project too, with predominantly home goods tenants.
What about Long Island City, since you have two properties in Long Island
Sure,
City?
sure. Long Island City is, I don't need to say what's transpired over the last 3 or 4 weeks, but with the arrival of Amazon, that is tremendous news for the market. And while it's going to take just a little bit of time to play out as plans really unfold, and they're starting to unfold now, I've been talking about Long Island City retail for the last 2 years or so, really seeing that opportunity, never even factoring in the case for an Amazon coming, but the large supermarkets are now recognizing, with the influx of Amazon employees over the next 2 to 4 years, let's say, and 25,000 units of new residential units that are built or being built, and the influx of employees. And all of a sudden, not that surprisingly, we've seen the supermarkets reappear at Hub. And at Hub, we have the opportunity to create an 85,000 square foot big box.
What about this story about all malls are dead? Who's moving into the spaces within malls today?
I think it's an exciting time in the mall world. I think that the malls have a terrific opportunity to make themselves relevant again.
Not all malls.
Not all malls,
Not all
but the ones in the tri-state area certainly.
Correct. The well located, the well positioned,
any place with dense population and a
Sure.
little bit of money, and that's
I
pretty much
agree.
everywhere where your show is going to go. The anchor apocalypse of these owners getting back these large boxes is going to really give them an opportunity to make them relevant again and put in some tenants that people want to go to as opposed to have to go to.
Right. That's an excellent point, by the way, because the low market rents that these anchors are paying these long-term owners of malls, when they vacate and create the opportunity for them to really generate more cash flow.
It's going to free up capital.
So,
Exactly.
we brought up the At Home. Another chain that opened up 4 locations of 5 locations last year was Hobby Lobby. The crafts market does well, okay? They really don't do that much over the internet. They're more of a brick and mortar space. The question of that, the other food changes, okay? Chick-fil-A has been invading New York City. And the irony is both entities that I just brought about are only open 6 days a week because they're both religious ownership behind
Right.
them. What's happening with properties in Brooklyn, like downtown City Point?
So, well, they're obviously doing very, very well, but I think you can make an interesting analogy between what's going to happen in Long Island City over the next 2 to 5 years as what's happened in downtown Brooklyn over the last 5 years or so. Whereas 5 years ago, or 6, 7 years ago, that downtown Brooklyn area was a total central business district. At night, there was no activity, there were no restaurants, bars, or shopping to speak of. But as more and more resi development came in, retailers followed, and it's become almost an entire neighborhood where there was no one before, depending upon whose propaganda you listen to, there's 15, 20,000 new apartments. I always make the analogy that when we moved into our office in 81 Willoughby, the then tallest building in Brooklyn was behind us. But within a year of that, you walk out the front door, you look across the street, and the Stoll organization built a building taller than the one behind us. Within 6 months, Avalon Bay, directly across the street from Stoll, built a taller building. And now there's more stuff going on. So that influx of people that were never there before are driving retail in a very interesting
I mean,
and
when we
aggressive
talk about
fashion.
retail, City Point has we were talking a little bit about Costco having the highest grossing Costco down in near Industry City. The highest grossing Alamo movie center is in downtown Brooklyn today.
But that's back to your point and everyone's point about, the experience retail as opposed, that's what people want to go to as opposed to have to go to.
So here's the question. There are so many coffee shops opening up each and every day. Stone Street, this one. When are we going to reduce the number of coffee shops?
Well, my partner David does the Starbucks work, and they are actually going to trim a few of the poorer performing stores soon. But, it's an easy business for young entrepreneurs to get into. It's low barriers to entry. And
I mean, I heard that somebody I knew years ago who practiced dentistry is the guy who owns Irving Place.
Okay.
Okay, people go into this. I mean, Bluestone They went into the business overnight. You have Kava. What's Kava?
Kava is Middle Eastern food, and it's terrific. We represent them in New Jersey. Really well-run chain with a solid line of grocery store product as well.
And what about Sweet Greens?
Sweet Green is taking the city by storm. 20-something branches in the last 5 years. And
So why is Sweet Green, which is one of the new emerging chains, seem to be doing better than Chopped or Fresh?
Well, it's an excellent question, and Sweet Green has really made itself a child of the cool kid, whereas Chopped looks much more like a chain store and a business. Sweet Green has a little bit more of an aura, and they've done a really good job protecting it.
One of the problems that not being a millennial, I walked in maybe 6 months ago to Gregory's Coffee, and I bought a cup of coffee, and basically they said to me, "Where's your credit card?" I said, "I don't use a credit card to pay for a cup of coffee." Now, there have been a number of articles written in the New York Times, in the Post, and other publications by basically saying that you're hurting the consumer, the poorer consumer who doesn't have a credit card or who doesn't have a debit card. Now, the retailers are saying the opposite. The retailer is saying,
I think that might be true in some cases. I think the retailers are liking that concept of consumers in lower income neighborhoods not having credit cards. It's forcing them out into the brick and mortar world. They have to go to a store. They need somebody who can take their cash. There may not be as many.
I don't see that many new bodegas opening up.
No, not new bodegas, but in the Bronx, you're having an influx of national retailers recognizing that the Bronx is a good place to do business. We built Riverdale Crossing in Kingsbridge, and we filled it with 12 or 13 national retailers who had their first brick and mortar stores in the Bronx ever. It was an
Bronx is the
unbelievable.
undiscovered country.
It really is. It's very.
I know
plus
you
living there, very
represented
underserved.
some landlords in the Bronx. Who have been moving into the properties that you've represented up there?
More service businesses than the national chains, but the Bronx is a perfect example of the story being understored. You could go on almost any rooftop in the Bronx and look around, and you're looking at tens of thousands of apartments and people. And too much of the retail has been kind of stuck in a time warp.
Yeah, you can go onto Fordham Road and it looks like you're in 1972. There's been no updating of the retail product there.
But the retail product does very well on Fordham Road.
Yeah, the retail product does well in the Bronx in general, and if
Right,
you have
because
the right
population,
product,
you have enough.
if
What
you have
about
the right
what about
product
the
in
dollar
place-
stores? I mean, we were talking before that Five Below, which is another public chain out of Philadelphia, opened up on Fifth Avenue. Okay, they've been in New York and New Jersey for a long time, but coming to Fifth Avenue, people were a little surprised that they'd open up on 43rd Street. So where do we see the dollar stores? Are they opening up?
They are.
It's supply and demand.
Yeah, opening up
Consumers
in Bronx.
appreciate those stores.
Oh.
So Five Below was a dollar store on steroids.
Yeah, and dollar store's not going to open up on the Upper East Side, but there's plenty of room for them in the Bronx.
What about what we were talking before, the announcement recently that Ikea is following the small chain store concept, the same idea as the new Targets. I was downtown Target.
That's a function of the urban market, though, Mike.
Right.
They can't find. They always wanted the corner First and Main with a ton of parking and, pick a number, 50, 60, 80,000 square feet. They can't do that.
Right.
So again, based on computers and customer preferences, they're able to figure out the right number of SKUs to have in that store and just stock the stuff that sells, and they can go into a smaller footprint.
I don't know whether people are going to walk out of that store with stuff. I mean, I'm sure they will walk out with some stuff, but I think much more likely stuff is going to get
The press release that came
delivered.
out of Ikea basically said that they are depending on delivery.
Right.
They're
Well,
not really
that's
expecting people to take out.
I bought this suit at a well-known Clicks and Bricks retailer where I walked in, touched the fabric, felt it, bought it, paid for it, and it was shipped to my house. But I would never have bought it online without being able to actually touch it.
And men's suit, the Novos over there, are both doing very well. They're gearing themselves to the millennium, to the fitness type of situation. So we're seeing a change in the type of stores. Let's talk about the banking world. What do you see happening?
Downsizing, and 10 years ago, banks were every broker's dream. They overpaid, and they wanted to be everywhere. That's changed dramatically.
Right. I mean, if you've seen the press that Capital One is selling right now, that they're opening up. They had closed the cafes. They had bought the ING cafes a couple of years ago. They closed the location, the Vornado location on 58th Street and 3rd Avenue. Now they're planning to open up more of these because it's geared to a different type of consumer. I mean, the millenniums never walk into a bank.
I can't speak to that. I can just speak to the renegotiation of leases on renewals. Banks are going to continue to consolidate. Rents are going to come down in markets where they don't necessarily have to be. And you're going to see that play out, throughout Manhattan and the boroughs.
I'm not a millennial. I haven't been in a bank in years.
I'm not a millennial.
All taken care of
I go
online,
to the
and we have more money than any of us here.
Okay, but what about,
Big sacks of it.
we were talking before about the healthcare environment. I brought up the fact that this China Fund, which was a established 25-year-old Chinese restaurant on 64th Street and 2nd Avenue, now has been changed to a pet emergency store that's only open in the evenings and on the weekends to take care of that. You see the urgent care centers opening up all over. What else? What other phenomena are we seeing?
Co-working. You were asking about the malls. I think that a lot of these anchor spaces, some box goes out 180,000 square feet. A third of it could end up being a co-working space, which will add a little bit of vibrancy.
Are we seeing the
and day
national
traffic.
co-working companies, or are we seeing local co-working companies?
I think it depends.
Both. I think that you're going to see WeWork going into a lot of these malls soon.
Okay, and what about the grocery and the supermarkets? I mean, people need to eat. The Duane Reads and the pharmacies have always done well having a small portion of the groceries. Do you see more Wegmans, Whole Foods, which you also represent?
And also more Aldi and Lidl.
Right.
Going, it's two ends of the spectrum.
The German chains, Trader Joe's, Aldi, Lidl, continuing to do a lot of business in the smaller sector.
Trader Joe's recently opened up their largest Trader Joe in the city, 30,000 square feet at the Lower East Side on Essex Street. They've opened up 8 locations, Trader Joe's over there. I think what Timmy just said about Aldi, Lidl. Mm-hmm. Lidl just bought Best Market, a very well-run operation. They have 24 locations. Lidl had only come to the country about a year and a half ago. It's going to provide a new insight over there.
They've done some development in sort of fits and starts. Lidl has made some decisions that haven't necessarily worked well for them. I think that buying an existing chain will allow them to actually run stores as opposed to second-guessing their real estate choices and operational choices that they've made. They can have a benchmark that they can value themselves against.
As an old school guy who still goes to the bank and the supermarket, I love the supermarket experience. They're not going out of business. There's going to be consolidation and change.
The biggest problem with the supermarket, Avi Cantor was on my show from Morton Williams, saying that it's, besides the rent going up, the minimum wage has gone up from $8 to $15. That's the difficulty in the supermarket business.
I asked Christina Minardi, who's one of the C-suite people at Whole Foods, about that, and she said, it is something, but we basically pay them that anyway. So we'll figure it out.
Are we going to see more Whole Foods come to the invasion of the city?
I hope so.
The question that always comes out on my show about the 5th borough, do we see expansion in Staten Island, or do you know what Staten Island is?
I've heard of it. I'm not investing in Staten Island right now, so I can't really comment on it. I'll let the experts comment.
In terms of demographics, fastest growing borough.
475,000 census takes there, 700,000 registered cars.
And there's still space.
Right. I mean, Kimco, I believe, is expanding one of their locations in Simon Property. So even though there are the general growth situation, people say it's not there. Now, the other question is, how do you see, in Staten Island, the outlet mall, which is opening up in 2019?
Time will tell. I thought it was a heavy lift in the beginning, and they've managed to get some leases signed, and I'm
I would,
Timmy?
Hopefully
so
gonna be
they have
surprised.
struggled a little, but I heard they got a lot of traction, momentum. One would think that, if people are willing to take a bus or schlep 90 miles north of the city or whatever to go to an outlet, that they'd be happy to go to Staten Island. And I'm not quite sure.
You know
Fair
what?
enough.
As I said to a lender who lent money to the Staten Island Shopping Center, I said, this is not the same premium stores that people go to at Woodbury Commons. It's a different customer
Nike,
base.
Gap, and we'll see what
okay,
it looks like.
the Gap, the Gap, it's not Ferragamo. It's not all the the Europeans. When the Europeans and the Asians come to America, they know about Woodbury Commons. It's the same way that they know about Century 21.
But you know what? They all do take the ferry. Every tourist gets on the ferry and rides it back and forth, and it's not such a stretch
been
to
on
think
the
that they're going to get off and wander around for an
But
hour.
I
I think we're going to see over the next 2 to 3 years a real change in how the e-commerce ships. And I think that the venture capitalists and the investors in these retail companies are starting to notice the enormous cost of doing business online, how much it costs to do same-day
returns?
delivery and returns. And I think you're going to see a big shift away from that, pushing the consumer to take longer delivery times, try to cut back on shipping costs, and really turn back to brick and mortar as a defensive
Interesting
play.
point.
So in conclusion, the apple does look bright. I think the landlords, the tenants, the consumers, everybody's in a positive vein. I'd like to thank my friend Tim, Chase, and Joe, and I'll see you next week.